Princess Valari stood alone on the edge of the royal garden, her silver eyes staring at the stars. The twin moons of Vorthai hung above her like pale lanterns. The wind whispered through the glowing trees, but she felt no peace. She was the last of her bloodline and empire without an heir. The Zalvoran people were once rulers of half the galaxy. Their empire stretched across thousands of stars. Their technology was unmatched. Their cities floated in the skies. But now, their greatest crisis was not war or rebellion. It was silence. For over 100 years, no child had been born on Vorthai Prime. No heirs. No future. The Zalvarone genome had become too refined, too controlled, too perfect. Something had gone wrong. Their evolution had become their cage. Scientists had tried everything: cloning, hybrid programs, genetic resequencing, but nothing worked. Valerie had been told since she was young, "You are our last hope." And now, at 90 solar cycles, she had learned the truth. She could not bear children either. A soft chime broke her thoughts. The sound came from the old palace communication crystal. She tapped it with 2 fingers. "Your Highness," a voice said, "the Terran envoy has arrived. The human ship has docked." Valari took a breath. "Escort them to the throne hall. I'll meet them there." It's the throne hall of Vorthai was. Shaped like a star, golden light fell from high glass arches. Alien carvings lined the walls, telling stories of conquest and glory. But today, it felt empty. Captain Elias Rain walked beside his officers with quiet alertness. He was human tall, scarred and broad-shouldered. His dark hair was messy, and his uniform, though clean, looked like it had seen real war. He had many of them. The Zalvaron guards watched the humans closely. For centuries, humans had been seen as unpredictable and primitive. But recent history told a new story. Humanity had grown fast. They fought like devils, but they also built fast, adapted quickly, showed strange loyalty to those they called friends. Elias stopped at the foot of the dais, where Princess Valari sat. He bowed slightly, his voice calm but firm. "Captain, Elias Rain of the United Terran Fleet. I bring greetings from Earth." Valari studied him for a moment. His eyes were tired but sharp. He didn't look afraid, just curious. "You are not what I expected, Captain," she said. "And what did you expect, Your Highness?" "Someone more polished, less real." Elias gave a small smile. Humans tend to disappoint expectations. For better or worse, Valerie stood. "Walk with me?" They moved through the royal corridors, silent guards behind them. Valari spoke first. "Your people are strange to us. Fast-growing, loud, emotionally chaotic. I've heard we're a bit of a headache, and yet you survive. You thrive." Elias looked out a window, watching the skyships float over the city. "We weren't meant to survive. Earth was a mess, but we did. Sometimes survival is just not knowing when to give up." Valari turned to him. "Would you do anything to save your people?" "I already have." She paused. "Would you do something? Strange? Maybe even dangerous if it meant saving another?" Elias raised. "An eyebrow depends who I'd be saving." Before she could answer, an alarm echoed down the hall. Red lights blinked. The guards shouted, "Protect the princess!" A blast shook the floor. The wall ahead exploded inward. Smoke filled the corridor. Elias drew his sidearm without hesitation, pulling Valari behind a column. Figures in black armor charged forward, weapons drawn. Zalvaron rebels. "Ah!" They screamed in their native tongue. No more human corruption. Elias fired, his shots quick and clean. One rebel dropped, then another. He moved with practiced precision, shielding the princess as he advanced. The guards regrouped. The fight ended fast. Elias stood in the smoke, weapon raised, chest rising with calm breaths. The rebels were down. Valari stared at him not with fear, but surprise. "You saved me." "You're the only one who knows what's really going on," he said simply. "I protect my allies." That night, in the medical chamber, Valerie looked at Elias with new eyes. Your DNA, she said, holding a glowing data crystal. It's unique, very adaptable, strong, and it reacts strangely with ours. Is that bad? It might be the answer. Elias frowned. Answer to what? To saving my people. She walked to him slowly, her royal mask falling away. For over 100 years we've tried everything. Nothing worked. But your genetic signature might be compatible with mine. Compatible how? Asked carefully. She didn't look away. You might be able to give me a child, not just a hybrid, but a true heir, one that could bring fertility back to my race. Elias stared at her. You want me to? She nodded. It would be a full bonding, genetic, emotional, maybe. Even spiritual. It's not just mating, it's life-sharing. And there's no way back? No. Silence passed between them. Then Elias said, why me? Valerie's voice was soft. Because you didn't run. Because you fought for me. Because something in you feels alive in a way we haven't seen in a long time. Elias looked at her. He saw strength and sorrow in her eyes. Don't know what kind of father I'd be, he said finally. But if there's a chance to save a people, maybe it's worth trying. Alari stepped closer. Then our story begins now. Elias stood in the quiet of the Zalvaron temple, the air heavy with soft blue light. The walls were covered in glowing patterns, ancient symbols from a time when the Zal Duran were still learning to walk the stars. Now, that same race stood on the edge of extinction, and somehow a human like him had become their last hope. He still didn't fully understand how. He was a soldier, not a scientist. But the Empire's best minds had run every test. His DNA wasn't just compatible, it activated dormant traits in the Zalvaron genetic code, traits they had lost through centuries of forced evolution. But it wasn't that simple. To make it work, Elias and Princess Valerie would need to undergo something called a life-bond. It was more than biology. It was a merging of body and mind, memory and emotion, permanent, deep, unbreakable. Once done, they would never be the same. Valerie sat across from Elias in a quiet meditation chamber. No guards, no advisors. Just two people facing a choice. The science is clear, she said softly. But this is not just about the science. Elias leaned back, his voice calm. Because of the bond, she nodded. It will link us. First, only through instinct. But later. Our minds, our thoughts, our feelings, even across stars we'll feel each other. That doesn't sound easy. It isn't. That's why we don't do it lightly. In my culture, bonding is sacred. Once joined, we can't ever be with another. Elias was quiet for a moment. He looked at her not as a princess, not as an alien, but as a person. Her silver eyes held strength, but also pain. The weight of a dying race her whole life. Now she was offering to share it with him. He wasn't sure what scared him more, the science or the emotion. Why me? He asked again. Valerie gave him a soft smile. Because you're not afraid of what we are, and you're not trying to control it. You act from your heart. That's something we lost long ago. Elias looked down at his hands. Strong hands, battle-worn human hands. I've never been a symbol, he said. You don't have to be, she said. Just be real. Later that day in the Great Hall of Souls, the bonding ritual began. The chamber was round, with tall, crystal towers surrounding a silver platform. The crystals pulsed with life energy. Ancient chants echoed softly in the background. Elias stood shirtless, wearing only ceremonial armor across his chest and shoulders. Valerie wore a flowing robe of starlight fabric. Between them stood the High Seer, an elder who held both science and faith. The bond is not a chain, the seer said. It is a door. Once walked through, it never closes. Valerie stepped forward first. A small orb floated in her hands. Inside was a shimmering liquid, the essence Sita mix of her own life. Energy and Elias's DNA. She placed it into a slot on the platform. The seer turned to Elias. Do you accept the bond? Knowing it will change you forever? I do. And do you give yourself not to a crown or empire but to the person beside you? Elias looked into Valerie's eyes. I do.
Wow.
Then the seer nodded. Let the bond begin. Light burst from the platform surrounding them both. It wasn't painful, but it was intense. Elias felt warmth rush through his veins like fire and ice at the same time. He saw flashes memories not his own, a golden sky, a father's voice, a throne room filled with silence, he realized. He was seeing her memories. Valerie gasped. Her body trembled. She, too, was seeing flashes of Erthelius's childhood. His first battle, the moment he lost his brother in the Terran Kurux War, they were connected now. No walls, no lies. Elias reached for her hand.
Yes.
She took it without hesitation, and when the light faded, they stood as one bonded. The Empire reacted. Fast, some cheered. Others were confused, and a few were furious. The Royal Council met in secret chambers, arguing over what had been done. The High Priest called the bond an unnatural act. The head of the military called it a smart political move. But none of them could deny the truth. Valerie was different now. So was Elias. Their life signs had merged. Their aura signatures synced. The old bioscanners couldn't even tell where one ended and the other began. And then came the real shock. 2 weeks later, Valerie collapsed during a diplomatic meeting. Medics rushed in. The results came back in minutes. She was with child. In the royal garden, Elias sat on a stone bench, staring at the moons again. Valerie sat beside him, silent. So, he said after a long pause, I'm going to be a father. Valerie's voice was gentle. Yes, he looked at her. Scared, terrified, and you? He smiled softly. Same. They sat there together, not as leaders of different worlds, but as two people caught in something bigger than them both. I don't know what comes next, Elias said, but I won't run. I know, she replied. That's why I chose. You. In the sky above them, the stars shimmered, and in a small chamber deep in the palace, a heartbeat echoed a sound not heard in 100 years. The first heir of the Zalvaron Empire had begun to grow. Some called it a miracle, others called it a disaster. On Vorthai Prime, the capital of the Zalvoran Empire, celebrations lit the sky. Crowds gathered in the streets, cheering and throwing flowers. Many believed the royal child would save their dying race, but not everyone shared the joy in the dark corners of the empire. Powerful voices whispered. General Cathar stood before a hidden gathering of nobles and military leaders. His eyes burned with anger. This is madness, he growled. A human corrupting our bloodline. We are Zalvaron, pure, perfect. This child is an abomination. A noblewoman beside him nodded. We should have never opened our gates to Earth. The bond has weakened the throne. That human soldier has no place in our history. Cathar slammed his hand on the table. We must act before the child is born. Meanwhile, inside the palace, Princess Valerie and Captain Elias Rain stayed close to the royal medics. Valerie's condition was stable, but unusual. No one had ever seen a pregnancy like this. Her body changed in strange ways. Energy pulses moved through her skin. Her heartbeat sometimes matched Ilias's, and the child inside her grew faster than expected. The High Seer examined the energy readings and frowned. This child is something new. Not just a mix of Zalvoran and human. He carries both, yet is something more. More how? Elias asked. His aura is strong, stronger than yours, and I sense something ancient awakening in him. Valerie placed a hand on her stomach. He's not just our child, he's the future. One night, alarms echoed across the palace. An explosion hit the east wall. Smoke rose. Screams followed. Elias grabbed his sidearm and ran toward the noise. Guards met him at the entrance. Attackers breached the lower gate. Rebel soldiers. Armed and trained. Is Valerie safe? Elias asked. She's being moved to the inner vault. Elias nodded and headed straight into battle. Blaster fire lit up the night sky. It's smoke-filled. The palace halls. Zalvaran rebels, dressed in black armor, pushed forward with brutal force. Their target was clear, the Heir. Elias moved like lightning. His aim was perfect. Each shot dropped a rebel. He fought with the strength of 10 men, driven by one thought: protect Valari, protect the child. He reached the vault just as a squad of rebels tried to blast it open without hesitating. Elias jumped into the fight. Fists, blades, blasters, it didn't matter. He was a Terran warrior, and nothing would take his family from him. After the fight, smoke and silence filled the corridor. Bodies lay still. Elias stood covered in cuts and bruises, breathing hard. Then the vault doors opened. Valari stepped out, her face pale but proud. "You came," she whispered. "Always," Elias replied. She walked to him and placed her hand on his chest. Heart still raced. "I felt your fear," she said. "I felt yours too," he replied softly. The bond between them had grown stronger. They were no longer just two people. They were one soul in two bodies, and their child was still safe. The next day, Valerie called a meeting with her council. Some faces looked nervous. Others were angry, but none could ignore her voice. "I know many of you fear what is coming," she said. "You fear this child. You fear the human blood in his veins." Murmurs filled the room. "But I ask you this, what has fear ever given us? We feared change, and now our race is dying. We feared outsiders, and now one of them saved your Princess Weiss." Elias stood beside her, silent but strong. Valari continued, "This Heir is not a threat. He is hope. He is proof that our future is not over." The council remained silent. Then one old councilman slowly stood. "Your Highness, we will follow your lead. But no, if the child is truly a symbol of peace, then you must prove it." Theri nodded. "Then we begin." Today, later in their private chamber, Valari lay beside Elias, her head resting on his shoulder. "The nobles are divided," she said. "Some still want to remove you." Elias chuckled. "They're welcome to try." She looked up at him. "You risked everything. For me, for our child." "I don't regret it," he said. "Not 1 second." She touched his face gently. "Do you miss Earth?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "But here I feel like I matter, like I'm building something." "You are," she whispered. "We are." Sighed across the Empire. Change began to stir. Humans and Zalvaran started working side by side. New hybrid technology was designed. Trade routes reopened. And in the heart of it all was a bond no war could break. But far away, hidden deep within the outer reach, General Cathar watched a fleet of warships take shape. He clenched his fist and whispered, "This is not over." The stars above Vorthai Prime were peaceful, but peace is often the calm before the storm, in the dark edges of the galaxy. General Cathar's warships waited like silent predators. Black steel cruisers, invisible to scanners, drifted near. The border. Thousands of soldiers, loyal to the old ways, prepared for war. Inside the lead ship, Cathar stared at a glowing map of the Empire. "The child must not be born," he growled. "A human heir means the end of everything we are." An officer beside him spoke carefully. "But the people love the princess, and the human has earned respect." Cathar's eyes burned. "Fear can turn respect into dust. We strike before the birth. We erase the human. The princess will learn her place." He gave the order. The fleet moved toward Vorthai Prime, in the capital city. Princess Valerie stood at her window, one hand resting gently on her stomach. The child had grown fast. The doctor said he was healthy, strong, and unusual. His energy. Signature was like a living sun. Wherever she walked, people turned their heads. Some bowed. Others stared in awe. The unborn child already had power. Captain Elias Rain stood nearby, sharpening his old Terran blade. "You sense it too?" he asked. Valari nodded. "Yes, something is coming. Something big." Elias walked to her side. Do we have enough defense if Cathar attacks? We're not ready, she said honestly. He has the support of several outer systems, and most of our warships are still in repair. Elias looked her in the eyes. Then we fight smart. Not just with weapons, with people. Later that night, Elias held a secret meeting with a group of humans, Zalvaran loyalists, and mixed-blood engineers. He stood before them with firm confidence. This is not just a war over a child, he said. It's a war over the future. If Cathar wins, the Empire dies frozen in the past. But if we win, we give life to something new. A young human pilot raised her hand. Sir, I've flown Cathar's old patrol paths. You could sneak a team into his fleet hit. There comes in shields before they reach orbit. Zalvaran, Tech added. I can reroute palace power to the defense grid. It will hold longer than they expect. Elias nodded. Good, everyone has a role. We don't need to defeat Cathar in one blow. We just need to hold long enough for the heir to be born. The room was silent. Then a soldier stood up and said, For the princess. Another followed. For the child. Then the room echoed with voices. For the future. The next day, the sky turned dark. Cathar's fleet arrived. Without warning. Plasma beams rained down from orbit. Defense towers exploded. Starships scrambled to respond. The first strike hit the outer city. People screamed. Fires lit the horizon, but the palace remained standing shielded by Valerie's personal guard and Elias's plan. In the command center, Valerie stood with full armor over her royal robes. She was no longer just a ruler, she was a warrior queen. Status. She demanded, Shields at 68%, a guard replied. Main city districts are under attack. Enemy troops are landing in the lower ports. Valari turned to Elias. We hold the palace at all costs. If they reach me, they reach the air. Elias nodded. I'll take the ground troops. You stay with the command. No, she said firmly. I fight beside you. He looked at her, leaderly looked. She was glowing faintly. The bond had strengthened her. The child inside her wasn't making her weak, it was making her stronger. All right, he said. Let's show them what we're made of. The battle for Vorthai Prime had begun. Elias led a strike team through the burning streets. Humans and Zalvorans fought side by side. They used old weapons and new tech, simple traps and advanced drones. Valerie moved like a shadow through, smoke-fast, focused, fearless. Her energy blasts knocked enemy soldiers off their feet. She didn't hide behind her crown. She led with her fists. Cathar's elite troops pushed forward. But they hadn't expected this kind of fight. They expected fear instead. They met fury. In orbit, the loyalist pilots launched a surprise counterattack. One by one, they hit Cathar's command ships. Communications went dark. His fleet began to scatter. Back on the ground, Elias reached the palace steps, breath heavy, armor cracked. Blood ran down his cheek. Valari joined him, her hand glowing with power. We hold here, she said. This is the heart. Just then, Cathar himself landed, towering, armored, angry. He marched through his troops like a beast. Traitors, he shouted. You have poisoned the Empire. Elias stepped forward. The Empire is not yours anymore. Cathar raised his blade. Then die with your half-blood mistake, he charged. The fight was brutal. Cathar struck with fury, knocking Elias to the ground. Valari attacked from the side, but Cathar's armor absorbed her blasts. You are weak, he roared. Your blood is broken. Then something happened. A pulse of light exploded from Valerie's body, no, from the child within her. Cathar staggered, clutching his head. What? This Elias rose. That's our son. The blast knocked Cathar back. His armor cracked. Elias moved in, sword raised. One final strike. Cathar fell. The battle ended that night. The people gathered again, this time not in fear, but in celebration. The sky was still dark, but the future was brighter than ever in the royal chamber. Valari sat with Elias beside her, their hands locked. I feel him, she whispered. He's ready. The child stirred. The Empire had survived the fire now. The palace walls were quiet now. The fires of war had been put out. General Cathar was gone. His army had scattered, leaderless and confused. But inside the royal fortress, something even greater was about to happen. Princess Valari lay on a medical platform, glowing symbols floating above her. Her breathing was heavy. Sweat ran down her forehead. Around her the palace doctors moved quickly. The air was tense. Elias stood nearby, holding her hand. He had faced armies, seen stars explode, but now, watching her struggle through labor, he felt powerless. "She's strong," the lead medic said. "But the child is unique. His energy is different, like nothing we've ever seen." Valari let out a deep breath. "It's ready to come. I can feel him. He wants to be here." Elias leaned closer. "You're not alone. I'm here. I'll never leave." She smiled, even through the pain. "I know." As the contractions grew stronger, strange things began to happen. The walls of the palace glowed. The floors pulsed with light. The stars above the city shimmered and changed color: blue, gold, and violet. Citizens across Vorthai Prime looked up. Unsure what they were seeing, some knelt. Others held their breath. It was not fear. It was awe in the deepest parts of the city. Old machines that hadn't worked in centuries suddenly turned on. Ancient archives opened by themselves. Sacred lights, once dead, lit up the temples. All across the planet, people felt it a change. The child was being born. Inside the chamber, the baby let out his first cry. It was loud, clear, powerful. The sound echoed through the halls like a song of the stars. Elias stared, wide-eyed, as the doctors carefully held the newborn. He was small, wrapped in glowing cloth, his eyes already open. They weren't just silver like Valerie's. They held streaks of gold, blue and green colors, of both his parents and something beyond. Valerie reached out, her fingers trembling. The baby turned his head toward her hand when their skin touched. A soft wave of energy spread through the room, warm and calming. "He knows me," she whispered. Elias stepped forward. "Is he?" The doctor, still stunned, nodded slowly. "He's more than all right. He's perfect." They placed the child in Valerie's arms. She looked down at him, tears in her eyes. "My son," she said, her voice shaking. "My heir." News of the birth traveled faster than light. Messages were sent across the galaxy. Crowds gathered outside embassies. Some cheered. Some cried. A few protested, but even they were silent when they felt the strange warmth in the air. The Zalvaran people, who had not seen a newborn in over 100 years, now had a child to believe in. But there was more. Sensors across the planet picked up a signal, a beacon ancient and buried. Deep within the heart of the planet had turned on. Only one type of energy could have awakened it: royal energy. And only one person in the galaxy carried that signature now: the child. The council of elders gathered quickly. Some were still unsure, some still feared change, but none could deny what they had seen. The eldest among them stood before the others. "I have lived 200 cycles," he said, "and I tell you what we saw today was not just birth, it was prophecy." He held up a scroll, aged and golden. This text speaks of a child born from two worlds. A child who will carry the voice of the stars. He will not just be Zalvaran, not just human. He'll be the first of a new kind. In the palace nursery, Elias watched his son sleep. The boy glowed faintly, like a tiny star. Valari came beside him, her strength returning. "You still think you're just a soldier?" she teased softly. Elias smiled. "Maybe I'm a father now, still getting used to the title." They stood in silence for a moment, then Valari said, "We need a name." Elias looked at her. "Do you have one in mind?" She nodded. "Kellyan." He repeated it, tasting the sound. "Kellyan, strong, ancient. A name for someone who's going to change the galaxy." She smiled. "Exactly." Days passed. The city rebuilt. The people healed. Kellyan grew quickly, faster than normal. At just a week old, he could already sit up. At 2 weeks, he reached out with his hands and created small bursts of light. Doctors were stunned. Scientists argued. Priests whispered about destiny. Elias didn't care about the rumors. He only cared that his son laughed every time he held him. Valari too changed. She was no longer just a princess. She had become a mother, a symbol of strength and hope. The people didn't just follow hers. They believed in her, together. Elias, Valar, and Kellyan became a family that united two worlds. But far beyond the stars, in a quiet corner of space, others had heard the signals. A group of unknown beings watched from the shadows, beings not seen for centuries. One turned to the others and said, "The Starborn has arrived. The balance has shifted." Another replied, "Then we must act. Old powers will not accept this peace." And just like that, a new threat began to stir. Back on Vorthai Prime, Kellyan opened his eyes again. He looked out the window, toward the stars. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, something looked back. Years passed. The galaxy changed. Where there was once fear, now there was unity. Where there was silence, there was the laughter of children. Kellyan, the Starborn, the first heir of the Zalvaron human line, was no longer a baby. At just 7 cycles old, he looked and thought like someone twice his age. His mind was sharp, his heart kind, and his powers unlike anything ever seen. He could read energy, heal wounds, calm angry minds with a simple touch. But more than that, he was a symbol of peace, of hope, something new, in the Grand Hall of Stars, now rebuilt with both Terran and Zalvaran design. Princess Valari stood beside Elias, dressed in white, royal robes. Kellyan stood between them, wearing his ceremonial robe, hand in his father's. The hall was full. Representatives from every system in the Empire were there, humans, Balvorans, and other species who had once kept their distance. Today, they were here for one purpose: to witness Kellyan's naming as crown heir. The High Seer stepped forward. His voice echoed through the chamber. "Let all races see and remember. Today, we do not just name a prince, we name a future." He placed a glowing mark on Kellyan's forehead. "From this day forward, you are Kellyan Rainvale, first heir of the United Empire." Applause filled the room. Some cheered, some wept, and in that moment, the past seemed to fall away. But peace never goes untested. Far from Vorthai Prime, in the dead zone beyond the map, a fleet emerged from the void. Ships made of black crystal and shadow. At their center was something ancient, something angry. A being known only as the Harbinger. It had watched the galaxy from the dark corners of space. It saw the rise of Kellyan as a threat to the old powers, the kind of balance it had ruled over for millennia. "This child," the Harbinger said, "will bring light where there must be shadow." Its voice reached across stars. "Destroy thee, boy, and the light." The dark fleet began to move. On Vorthai Prime, Kellyan stood at the edge of the palace garden, looking up at the stars. He didn't speak. He didn't blink, he just watched. Elias found him there and placed a hand on his shoulder. "What do you see, son?" Kellyan replied softly. "They're coming." Elias froze. "Who?" "Something old. Something scared." He turned to his father. "They fear me, not because I will hurt them, but because I will change them." Elias looked into his son's glowing eyes. They held wisdom beyond years. "We'll protect you," he said, "whatever it takes." Kellyan smiled. "I know, but maybe this time I protect you." The dark fleet arrived 3 days later. Black clouds covered the sky. Communication systems failed. Energy fields began to flicker. The Empire activated every defense system. Human ships flew side by side with Zalvaran battlecruisers. The people remembered the last war, and this time they were ready. Valari stood in the war room, commanding her generals. Elias suited up, wearing his old Terran armor. Polished but battle-worn, Kellyan stood in the middle of the control chamber, calm and still. Then the Harbinger's voice echoed through the galaxy, "Give us the child, or watch your stars burn." Silence. Felled Elias stepped forward. "Come and take him." The battle began. Dark ships fired beams of shadow energy, tearing through shields. The defenders fought back with plasma and light. Dozens of ships were lost in the first hour. On the ground, shadow creatures landed and attacked the cities. Elias led a strike team straight into the worst of it, fighting like the old soldier. Was Valari flew above the cities in her personal glider, blasting enemies and guiding rescue teams? But no matter how hard they fought, the Harbinger's forces kept coming. Then Kellyan walked out alone into the battlefield. The shadows froze. The Harbinger appeared above him, floating like a giant wraith. "You are not meant to exist," it hissed. Kellyan looked up. "And yet, here I am. You bring light. That is not our way." Kellyan raised his hand. "Then maybe your way is done." A blinding wave of energy burst from the child. Not a weapon, but a memory. A vision, every mind across the battlefield. Human, alien, even enemy saw what Kellyan saw. A future. Where races worked together, where war was no longer the only answer, where strength came from unity, not fear. The Harbinger screamed. Its form cracked. Shadows peeled away like smoke. The creatures it commanded fell still, then dissolved. Kellyan stood alone in the silence, and the war was over. Days later, the skies cleared. The cities rebuilt. The people did not just cheer for Kellyan, they believed. In him, he had ended a war, not by killing, but by showing something greater. Hope. Years passed. Elias, now older, stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The building shone with a mix of earth and Zalvaran design. The air felt peaceful. Valari joined him, taking his hand. "We did it," she whispered. "No," Elias said with a smile. "He did it." In the courtyard below, Kellyan trained. With other young leaders' children from different worlds, races, and powers, he wasn't just a prince now, he was a symbol. A guide, the start of a new age. Across the stars, the people told stories about a warrior from Earth, about a princess who couldn't bear 8 children until a human gave her an heir, and about the boy who changed everything. Humanity was no longer seen as just survivors or fighters. They were builders of peace. They were family, and Kellyan, the child of 2 worlds, would one day rule them all, not with fear, but with light.